From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello and welcome back to the show. My name is Noel.
Our colleague Matt is on a skibidi adventure and will be returning soon. They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Deckens. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Noel, it is one of our favorite evenings of the week.
It is, Ben. I'm sorry. I do have to say, in the spirit of strange news, which came before, you mentioned skibidi, and I did just want to point out what I thought was a joke strange news story, like a fake news story, was in fact true. Michael Bay is launching a skibidi cinematic and televisual universe. I honestly, I feel like I'm maybe more in the know than a lot of millennials. I thought skibidi toilet was just like one viral video. It's apparently a whole universe of this like Unreal Engine kind of dated video game engine generated content of this dystopian kind of universe that has been memed, of course, and turned into like games on Roblox and all of these other platforms. And Michael Bay, of all people, is developing this into a whole world. And I think it's the end times are nigh, my friend.
Our buddies, Jack and Miles over at the Daily Zeitgeist hipped me to that story, and I thought they were just riffing with each other in their typical dry humor. Also, skibidi is a thing Jack O'Brien made up.
What do you mean? Like parallel thinking made up?
No, he completely manufactured the whole thing.
No,
Yeah, he did. And gaslighting is also a thing he made up.
Oh, that's what you're. I see. I get it. Okay, got it. Consider my gas lit. It's lit AF, as the kids say. No, I don't even know if they say that anymore. What do the kids say? Let's talk to some kids in the form of listener mail.
All right, let's get into it because we are going to hear some fantastic messages from our fellow conspiracy realists. And Noel, there's an email that I think really spoke to both of us. I can't wait to hear this one on air.
Well, I can't remember exactly which segment it took place. It's something we talk about a lot. But Matt, I believe, brought a story about a true crime event. I believe either a murder that some amount of the detective work was leaning on a dream or something like that, or like some purported psychic abilities. And then we got into the whole discussion of like, are psychic abilities real? It's in the original cold open of the video and the podcast, from psychic powers to the paranormal, all of that good stuff. So it is kind of red meat for a show like this, but I was pretty surprised when I came out and said that I do think psychic phenomenon is real, and Matt was much more skeptical.
He's skeptical about the weirdest things, which is part of why, but also what a genius this guy, our colleague Matt. We have no chumps in the squad. I was interested in this too, and I think a lot of us playing along at home felt called to the concept of ESP and intuition. We know that in the past, law enforcement has used the idea of psychic discovery as a way to get around, certain legal restrictions. But also, my family's past, man. I come from a place where people genuinely do believe that they practice psychic powers. And to your earlier point, we have spent years exploring the line between intuition and ESP.
Yeah, and not to delay the message too much longer, but what also came up in that discussion, around Matt's story was an interview we did with Russell Targ years ago, who has a book called Third Eye Spies, about a literal program the CIA had that this guy helped design, very smart dude from MIT, to supposedly help train psychic spies, to be able to astrally project to locations where victims are being held, or kidnapping or murder, evidence or bodies or what have you. And talking to him really turned a corner for me, because this is like a really learned individual who really straddles the kind of line between science and the supernatural. And I'm pretty sure that this has been discussed outside of our crew, but dude clearly seemed to be the inspiration for Egon Spengler in the Ghostbusters, because I think, Ghostbusters is, of course, a comedy movie with some horror elements.
How dare you?
It is a very interesting exploration of that line between science and the occult and supernatural stuff. So now moving on to the letter from one of my favorite nicknames of recent memory, Arborious, Master of Plants, which is very Elden Ring or something. Like, I don't know exactly what it is, but it has a great mouthfeel to it. And here we go. Ahoy, gents. Arborious here. Master of Plants. I inserted that. Regarding the woman whose dream led the police to the murder victim, my thinking on such matters is as follows. I fully believe in phenomena like prescient dreams, but I don't think there's anything supernatural involved.
Go on.
And she does. Our subconscious minds are orders of magnitude, all caps, more powerful than we realize, constantly compelling and connecting thousands of data points in ways we couldn't possibly imagine or accept. I like the computer analogy. Our subconscious mind's processors aren't bogged down with piloting our meat machines, which is like an industrial band name for the ages. Instead, running in the background, performing millions of tiny calculations we know nothing about. When something comes together, it makes sense that it would be presented via a subconscious process like dreaming. So that woman subconsciously absorbed thousands of tiny clues from people and situations around her, which eventually added up to the location of the bodies. Mannerisms, smells, tiny visuals, nearby people's conversations she wasn't listening to. Who knows? But how many times have you heard stories like, I dreamed of someone I hadn't seen in years and randomly ran into them the next day? The majority of people, if they're honest, would probably tell you they've had similar experiences. And I think a lot of that comes down to the power of the subconscious mind. Something to think about when you can spare the bandwidth. Thanks, gents. I hope you know that what you do has a real impact on people's lives and mental states. That's very positive, even when you're talking about frightening things. I don't know how you manage that exactly, but keep it up. Arborious, Master of Plants. Ben, I mean, not to be redundant, we've certainly talked about various aspects of this, over the many years we've been doing the show, but a couple of things stand out. I think Arborious laid it out beautifully in terms of like, what is the line between psychic abilities and intuition? I think we both did, we may even be going to see it together for a second time, saw the horror movie Longlegs, and there's a character who's an FBI agent who has these intuitions or these premonitions. But there's a line where her boss is like, well, being half psychic's better than nothing. And then say, how about we just call you highly intuitive?
There we
go. She says that's fair. And I think that's really interesting, but I also know that we have problems sometimes in court cases with eyewitness accounts. So how do these things add up? Like, if it all depends on the person, doesn't it? Like, all of us have these subconscious things that we're picking up on. Some people are just better at interpreting the data accurately than others, because we know all of these things can also add up to stories we tell ourselves, to complete fabrications.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a very astute observation, Noel. And Arborious, want to thank you in specific for, as we said, laying this out in such a perfect way. We don't want to be redundant. This is important. If you are looking for a book to teach you more about intuition, please, please, please read The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. We've mentioned it in the past. It came out in 1997, so I guess it's relatively new in the grand scheme. But the idea here is this guy, de Becker, looked through the notion of intuition, the idea that you have a hunch. Like, Noel, for instance, have you ever met someone and had a really good or really bad vibe off them that you couldn't explain consciously?
Bro, vibes are currency, my friend. I mean, seriously, like if you don't have the ability to kind of discern that from somebody, then you're going to be left in the dust a lot of times, or it's going to be a lot easier for people to take advantage of you. Because, I mean, if you don't kind of get a general sense of someone's authenticity, from the moment you kind of meet them, then that things might not go super well for you, in terms of, the ability for people to deceive you, right?
Yeah, and this sensitivity is no less magical when we understand it, right? It's still brilliant stuff. A lot of these unconscious cues you're describing, Arborious, are part of the daily interaction of humans with their environment and with other life forms. One thing that may be of particular interest to a lot of us listening tonight would be the concept of smell. You have vestigial pheromone receptors in your body if you are human. And sometimes that can explain why you do or do not vibe with another person. You can learn more about the use of intuition as seen through the framework of psychic powers in excellent documentaries like Vibes, starring Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. It is a fabulous work of investigative journalism.
Thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, no, it's good. But seriously though, I mean, when I say vibes are currency, I think I was saying that coming from a lot of the coverage around the political climate or the race right now, and how people were saying that JB Vance just has like no riz and just his vibes are just instantly like trash. And we are playing a vibes game, a vibes based game, where if someone comes off as insincere, immediately you're like not in their corner. And the thing is, you can be really good at feigning sincerity as well and like tricking people's vibe sensors, that is also a thing. But in general, if someone's just really ham-fisted at it, it's going to trip people's spidey senses in that way. And I love that you mentioned the smell angle, because we often talk too about just like what our equipment is as human beings. And like, dogs, there's always the old trope in the movies when the bad guy comes into the house and the hapless victim is clueless about his intention, but the dog knows what's up. And while dogs maybe can't speak to us, it's very clear that they have equipment more finely tuned that are picking up. We even talked about spectrum, like the visual spectrum, where they can maybe even see other dimensions or something like that, right? Like, and the idea of color spectrum and things that transcend, this physical plane, I guess.
Or at least the things that the humans can observe, right? Infrared light, for instance.
That's the one. That's what I was. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Ben.
No, it's perfect. There's also, look, what this teaches us is that if we are thinking critically about the concept of hunches or intuition or psychic powers, whatever you want to call it, we do know that the information the human brain thinks about, like the metacognition, when you think about why do I like or not like a person, that is coming to you in a incredibly digested, pre-analyzed form from your subconscious. Your subconscious, the part of your brain that you don't really speak to, it is continually evaluating innumerable variables and factors. You might think, for instance, this person's energy is really clicking with me. And you have to walk uphill cognitively to figure out why you have made that assumption. You are processing information that another part of you has delivered to you, sort of wrapped up and assembled, you know?
It's almost like a packet of data, like a data stream coming into a computer over a network. It's all about like parsing it out and like separating the noise from like the actual good packets.
Yeah, exactly. So the concept of dreams is fascinating as well, because one of the best technological comparisons would be defragging a hard drive. That's what the human brain does when it sleeps, right?
Yes, 100%. But there are like different, I guess, schools of thought behind that, even where it's like, do dreams mean anything? You know, there's like Freudian thought or whatever, and that kind of, philosophy, I guess, behind it. I mean, there's a science to it, I suppose, but it is all kind of like theory, like, is it really your subconscious delivering important stuff to you, or is it just kind of nonsense, fragmented gobbledygook? Like, I had a dream last night that I went on a laundry stealing caper. Like, I robbed a laundromat of other people's clothes.
Classic
with
role.
The cast of All That, the 1990s children's sketch show. And then we ended up going on a rampage and being chased by the police through like this suburban neighborhood in like some northwestern kind of like place. And then I was arrested by a police officer who was played by who's the guy that was the ladies' man on SNL?
Oh no, that guy?
Yeah. And he, I had a bag of weed on me, and he said I was in a part of New York where that wasn't legal, and he took it. But then one of the guys from All That, Danny Tamborelli, Little Pete from Pete and Pete, he said, "No, that's mine. It wasn't his."
Oh,
and he got me off the hook.
Took the hit for you
with Tim Meadows. Yeah, but it's like, what is that? What is that possibly trying to tell me, if anything? Or is that just the product of a maybe not rested enough mind?
It's telling us, the defrag argument is interesting. And I agree with you, Arborious, master of plants, that the subconscious mind is doing a lot of work behind the scenes, right? So, when we're always very careful when we wrestle with the concept of psychic abilities, right? Because it gets a bad rap. There are a lot of hoaxsters out there.
100%. Taking advantage of people, cold readers on those TV shows where they're trying to speak to people's deceased relatives. And it's all flim-flam and stuff, absolutely taking advantage of people's emotions.
Yes, exactly. Leveraging those, weaponizing them even. But here's the thing. And when we say this, what you're going to hear next, we know it's going to speak to a lot of us at home right now, personally. People who genuinely experience what we could call strong intuition, if we're being diplomatic, those people are not going to be your Madam Bells. Those people are not going to do any kind of call-in line or publish a book that they want you to buy or make you pay to talk to them. Those people are typically, and this is just my experience, they're typically going to have a number of discrete moments that are inexplicable to them, epiphanies, revelations.
They might not even know what their abilities are. They might have like explained them away or like lived their whole life feeling as though it's a burden or some kind of curse, Yeah,
they wake up and they decide they shouldn't get on the plane, right? Or they find themselves for some reason unable perhaps to leave their home to go to their job. And then later, there's a massive car accident or an explosion. Now, how do we explain this? I can tell you that in most cases of which I am aware, most cases that I can prove of intuition, people are very afraid of being ridiculed or being seen as a wingnut. So there is a huge burden of trust that has to exist for someone to tell you, hey, I have information about a thing that might apply to you, and I am trusting you to not tell other people, but just so you know, even small stuff. I was recently, this is big in my family. Like I recently, I've got some friends moving out to Los Angeles, and I had to tell them that the second house they look at is bad.
Okay.
I'm serious, and it's weird to say that on air.
So would you call that intuition, or would you call that like something extra?
Well, I just know the second house is a bad one, man.
Okay. That reminds me. That reminds me. There's a scene again. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a scene in Long Legs where a character knows something about a house without having the right to know it. Without having necessarily received any intel or any actionable data or evidence. It's just a feeling. Oh, I know what I was going to say too, is a lot of times that's why in movies you always see the person like, but you got to listen to me. You got to listen to me. The building's going to blow up. Nobody believes them. And they look like a crazy person until the thing happens,
Right. Yeah. Just like you said. And before we pause and move on, one thing that's very important that you just brought up, Noel, is the idea of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Not to sound too much like a certain politician, but the concept here is, look, if you ground a plane because the plane will crash, and the plane therefore does not crash because you kept it on the ground, you are in a lose-lose situation, right? You've saved lives, but you look like a crazy person because you can't prove the plane would have crashed.
Well, and if the Final Destination franchise is anything to be believed, death's coming for you in an elaborate Rube Goldberg fashion sooner or later. So is it really just kind of like delaying the inevitable? No, I'm joking, but I think all of this stuff is absolutely, food for thought. Let's take a quick break. Thank you, Arborious, by the way, for having both a delightful nickname and a great email for us to discuss. We're going to be right back with some more listener mail.
And we have returned. We're going to go to the phone lines here. This is a nice follow-up to our earlier conversation. Joe asked a question that I would love your opinion on. Here we go.
Hey, guys. It's Joe here from, we should rather not say. Was just listening to that spy episode and was also watching the documentary, and a thought came to me. The CIA is declassifying all these documents and allowing people to have this knowledge of remote viewing and the like of psychic abilities. Don't you think they have some preventative measures for that already in place? So if the general public was to achieve said abilities, they have the proper protection. I don't know. It seems like they wouldn't just let us know that without, having some proper caution. I don't know. It's something to think about. Love you guys. Keep it up. You can also use my name and this message on whatever you need to. Thanks, guys.
All right. I knew this would be of interest to you, but
absolutely. I mean, it's perfect counterpoint to what we just were talking about. And I think the Russell Targ interview comes up yet again because we know the CIA had a program to train spies that was declassified or whatever led Targ to be able to talk about it. But of course, they would have to have countermeasures, and we also know that there are other countries that also have secret spy type programs, or I'm sorry, psychic spy type programs.
Right. Most particularly the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
And during the Cold War, this, first off, Joe, what a fantastic question. The idea of countermeasures against weaponized ESP, as we established earlier, we could we could use ESP and intuition as synonyms, right, in practice. So is there a way to protect against the weaponization of enemy intuition? What a weird sentence to say. This reminds me of? Not just Targ, Russell Targ, who is a super cool guy. But it also reminds me of our earlier episode on the concept of tinfoil hats.
Sure.
Right?
Protecting our, shielding us from potential infiltration, like directly into our minds. And God, man, I mean, not to derail too far from this, but it makes me think too of like all of the implant technology that is now kind of becoming much more of a reality. And the idea of like our brains being able to literally be hacked. So that's not exactly ESP, but it's almost more terrifying and very real. So whatever your thoughts on extrasensory perception and psychic powers might be, but I don't know, Ben, do we have any evidence of any counter intelligence programs designed to protect against these sorts of things, or is it more just sort of like space race type stuff where we have to like keep up with the what's a good Russian last name?
The politically incorrect version would be keep up with the Ivans.
There you go.
Is how they would have said it in World War II and the Cold War. Look, we know there was provably some, I would say, dabbling in this idea of protecting the information in an asset's mind. And this doesn't quite reach the level of like, okay, so what Joe is asking about basically is the Magneto helmet. If you're a fan of comic books, if you're a Marvel nerd, then you know that the reason Magneto wears his special helmet is because it prevents telepaths from being able to mess with his mind. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, right.
So it's the idea
because
that
to have control of a mind that powerful that already contains, it has the ability to literally make anybody do anything, that would be, tantamount to handing over the launch codes to the enemy.
And I love that you're saying that because in the story, both or in the lore, both Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher, Magneto, they are both essentially walking weapons of mass destruction, right? And controlling that kind of mind could lead to catastrophic existential threats. So what we do see, or what we did see at least during the Cold War, was early research that, I don't know, it was kind of spaghetti at the wall stuff. Early research in the Soviet era about the concept of using certain materials to build like a psychic Faraday cage. So a Faraday cage is a real thing. It will prevent certain types of energy from penetrating a barrier. So back in earlier evenings, the Soviet government did fund research into not just the concept of astral projection. Here in the U.S., we had
Stargate Project.
We had Project Stargate. Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, the Soviets were conducting this kind of research. They were also working to figure out how to defend against this kind of thing. Now, for a lot of us more skeptical folks in the crowd, this all sounds very woo-woo, made up stuff.
Well, because to build a device like this would kind of require a much clearer understanding of how these things work than I would argue anyone in the scientific community barely acknowledges that this stuff exists. So how would you use science to build something to protect against something that scientists don't believe is real? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, further, if we're just being hard-nosed about this, why would you evolve a countermeasure in addition to countermeasures that you already know work? For instance, why would you use polonium on someone who lives on the third story of a building with some really nice windows.
Yeah, you don't bring polonium to a window fight. Never do it.
That's true. That's a stuff
Bad
they don't want
tactic.
you to know. Promise, we won't bring polonium to the window fight. But you see what I'm saying? Like the question here,
Path of least. There's a path of less resistance at the very least, right?
Yeah. The acronym that is very popular here in the West is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So we don't want complicated Rube Goldberg-esque attempts at solving something. If there was, and this has not been proven, but if we're just freestyling, if there was some sort of weaponized psychic ability, then the immediate move would be to contain it, and if someone else controls it, to eradicate
Neutralize it.
Yeah. And if you're eradicating it, then you're not going to make some kind of fancy, what's that? Stranger Things solution
type device or whatever.
Right. You're just going to neutralize them with full prejudice.
Yeah. And then, an asset like that would be as accessible for that type of let's call it operation as any other political figure would be,
right.
In terms of protection, in terms of isolation, siloing, or all of that good stuff. And I guess what we're talking about here too is maybe because, obviously regular old run of the mill ESP would be dangerous in terms of the ability to extract intelligence, to extract, as a surveillance, right? But I think what we also might be talking about is going a little further into like hardcore telekinesis abilities, to like use like Professor X or Magneto could literally lift a building off the ground and smash it into, another building, or like use powers of their mind to act as weapons in and of themselves. So that to me maybe would be, I don't know, the Faraday cage part is interesting because we certainly have facilities that like, clean rooms and such, and like things that are like so like isolated and they would be impenetrable by normal surveillance mechanisms. So I don't know. It's again, today's kind of thought experiment day. Well, it kind of always is, but more so than usual. Even in the episode that we just recorded, which will be coming out next week, I believe.
Time is so weird.
It is weird, especially when we do things kind of in reverse, because we're recording this listener mail a day later than we normally do.
Peek behind the curtain. Also, before we move on, because I know we got to get to an ad break, and I have something I'm very excited to pitch to you. If you have any awareness of attempts at preventative measures for something, like you said, Noel, has not been proven to exist, we want to know. conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com. If you are operating an asset that, again, just thought experiment, if you're operating an asset that has some sort of extraordinary ability, you don't want the big telekinetics. You want someone, if telekinesis existed, you want someone who could just close an artery by looking at
that. Right.
And
then you'd never be able to trace it back to anything.
You want something small.
Or maybe I think we did an intro to a classic Ridiculous History episode about arsenic. The idea of like, at the time it was the perfect weapon because it was odorless, colorless, and utterly untraceable, at least with the technology of the time. But I didn't even think about that, Ben. It wouldn't be like The Boys, exploding someone's head.
No, never.
It would be like something where you would never know what had happened, causing someone's heart to stop.
Right. That's the dream, right? That's why the British loved what'd they call it? Inheritance powder. That's what they call it. Yeah. That's part of it. And if there is an ability to delve into someone's mind, like use telepathy to extract information. Again, if something like that existed, then that would mean there was some sort of interchange of energy and information between those two brains. If that would be the case, then there would logically be a way to interfere with that passage, right? With that process of back and forth. none of this is proven to exist.
Of this, there's no evidence of any of this in like what we've seen work in terms of history. Like, it's just, again, to keep it simple, stupid. Like, the Russians are using bots and like internet, tactics to quote unquote rig elections or to like change public perception. They're using, AI is more of concern to me than psychic abilities. We need to figure out how to guard against that stuff, work behind the 8 ball on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of the things that were considered to be supernatural or psychic are now being created via technology. The modeling systems of that are capable of predicting behavior get very close to foretelling the future. These same systems can be applied and are being applied to human beings to predict your own behavior, because every person is their own country, right? We can model this stuff. In that case, and I love that you bring this up, in that case, Joe, the preventative measure for weaponized ESP on the ground in a microcosm, like in your life right now, the preventative measure is not to participate online.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, the internet is its own kind of weird oracle, and especially once you start figuring the AI in, because it all comes down to, again, the psychology of the intuition question we were talking about earlier. Like, all this stuff is out there. And again, and I came out, as believing to some degree in some form of extrasensory perception beyond just intuition. I don't know what it is. Just like I say, I don't necessarily believe in a Christian God, but I don't believe in nothing. I just don't know what to call it. And I'm holding out hope that there is something out there beyond, what we know in the universe and in the afterlife and what have you. But I just don't know what to call it. Mm-hmm. And I feel the very same way about this kind of stuff. But I think our kind of coming full circle around to it, to AI and technology and the internet being its own like exponentially dangerous form of this kind of stuff is absolutely accurate.
And as any student of the human condition understands, people don't know most things. Human civilization overall does not know most stuff. And that is a fact that needs to be acknowledged and addressed. Speaking of things we don't know, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor. We're going to return with a letter from home, which is, no spoiler, it's a weird one. I'm very interested in your thoughts, very interested in everybody else's thoughts. And we've returned. Okay, so this is a little bit different. It's a conversation I've been having over a series of months now with various experts in various fields, veterans, biologists, oceanographers as well. Riddle me this. What is the most dangerous, large, non-human animal? We're building a leaderboard, and we're to be clear.
Dangerous. I mean, shark. Trump won't stop talking about sharks.
I think he saw one or something recently.
What is he saying? I've been hearing chatter about him talking about great white sharks, but what exactly is this thing that he keeps saying about sharks?
Oh, he's amazed by them. You know how like when you see a kid have their first day at the zoo and they just won't shut up about pandas or whatever?
Trump just found out about sharks.
He said he would prefer to be electrocuted instead of eaten by a shark.
Where does that equivalency come from? Like, how are those the two things you're weighing?
Who are we to judge? We do a lot of thought experiments here.
That's true. Fair enough.
But he said in a speech in Grand Rapids, Michigan recently, he said, if I'm in a boat and it's all electric and it starts to sink, I ask the guy, do you get electrocuted sitting over this? And then I say, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this because it's an analogy. If there's a shark about 10 yards away, do I get electrocuted or do I go with the shark?
The old shark battery conundrum.
Right.
Real, what is it? A Kobayashi Maru.
There it is. Question for the ages. Yeah.
I think you could probably escape. I don't think the battery would electrify the entire ocean or whatever. Like, I think anyway, irrelevant. Agreed, though. Sharks equal scary, and they will eat your ass.
Shark attacks are such a... It's like the old John Mulaney joke about quicksand. Quicksand is way less of a threat in your adult life than it seems when you're a kid. And sharks are an easily avoidable threat. You earlier asked me in a previous, I think it was Strange News, or maybe an episode we were talking about this. You straight up asked me whether I was confident that I could fight a shark.
Yeah, PvP is the term we've been using.
PvP, yes. Yeah.
You think, and we did have an Australian listener write in with incredulity about your ability to do so with a kangaroo.
Yeah, look, folks, I understand the skepticism, but you got thumbs, you got agility. Kangaroos are forward-moving threats that
they can't hop sideways?
They can do, they could do stuff if they were more intelligent.
They're not boxers like that character in freaking Tekken.
I don't want to hurt one. I just think it's...
you're going to have to get your hands dirty if you're in the ring. You can't just bob and weave.
I'm just saying if you're in a situation.
But I believe your point about the shark was you'd need a little bit of a handicap.
Oh, 100%.
It would need to not be fully immersed,
mm-hmm.
right? And preferably 3 feet of water. On cocaine or not on cocaine.
Right. So we, in this discourse, and we want to hear from you folks, we differentiated on our leaderboards between maritime animals and surface animals. So Noel, the question on everybody's mind right now is, to you in particular, sir, what is one of the most dangerous surface animals?
Well, it's the human being, Ben.
I mean,
obviously.
Okay, great. Okay. Non-human.
The most dangerous game. I don't know. Bears are pretty gnarly.
Yeah,
they'll rip you up.
I never believed that Davy Crockett story.
Yeah. Oh, what was the Davy Crockett? Oh, yeah, you're right. He killed a bar with his bare
when
he was only 3.
I don't know.
He did something when he was only 3, which that's definitely 3-year-olds. Have you seen them? They're useless. They can't do it.
Wow. Hot takes. Yeah, but I've been talking about this on Instagram, Twitter, various social media platforms, hanging out with people because I'm fun at parties, obviously. And one of the questions that came up was about you, man. People were asking me which bird Noel thinks is the most dangerous surface animal. They just assumed that it would be they assumed that you would go bird.
Well, I wouldn't. No, that's it's the most terrifying to me personally. Would be the cassowary, the Velociraptor-esque dinosaur remnant. Walks on 2 legs and will disembowel you with its long, razor sharp foot claw. Who wouldn't be scared of that thing? But the internet says that it's the hippopotamus.
Well, the hippo has the highest kill count, but the hippo is also extremely stupid.
Yeah, and they're also, I don't know, I guess, are we talking about most likely encounter? You definitely, killing 500 people a year in Africa. I guess it's because they're just aggressive and they just tend to get freaked out really easily and just kind of
they have poor eyesight.
Oh, yeah.
And they're real chonkers. It's similar to the problem of the rhinoceros, but the hippo is more dangerous. The way we were thinking about the leaderboard is the idea of which animal could whip every other animal. So, could a tiger fight a hippo, for example, a Siberian tiger?
Would it? No, it would. Yeah, it would. It would eat it. I think it would. I mean, hippos aren't they picked off usually? Because they're so stupid and their eyesight's so bad? Aren't hippos often, killed by other predatory animals?
They're chonkers, though, is the thing. Gators won't, or crocodiles, right? Large reptiles don't usually mess with the hippo.
They're just too formidable.
They're just too big, man.
Dogs with rabies kill 59,000 people per year.
Wow.
This is from BBC Science Focused. I don't think this is bullshit. Snakes, 138,000 humans a year. This, because again, we're talking about much broader categories of animal now rather than just like a particular type, of hippo.
Right.
Yeah. Snakes is number 3, according to this list. Mosquitoes. We forgot about mosquitoes.
Well,
Malaria,
they're not large.
Disease. Okay. We're not
they have a huge kill count in that they are one of the most murderous life forms toward humans.
Humans is number 2, though. 400,000 deaths per year. Homicides.
Get it together, guys. Get to number 1.
Snakes, 138,000. Dogs with rabies, not large, I guess medium size, 59K a year. Something called assassin bugs.
Go
you heard
on.
of this?
I have
assassin
not.
bugs are
What's
primary
an assassin
spreader.
bug?
They're primary spreaders of the deadly Chagas disease. It's a blood-sucking predator found in Central and South America. The Chagas disease is potentially fatal and is transmitted through an assassin bug bite or by consumption of cold food or drink that has been infected by the insect and or its feces, which carries the protozoan Trypanosoma cruzi, also known as T. cruzi.
T. cruzi.
Less scary sounding. Scorpions are a big killer.
Yeah,
3,300. Crocodiles, 1,000. I think those are. What are we talking when we say large, though? Do we have a threshold for that? I think we need a little bit more data around the data points.
Yeah, this is great. This is where we need help from our fellow conspiracy realist. Also, quick point of correction. Hippos do use their eyesight. Rhinos are the ones that are tragically nearsighted. Hippos aren't intelligent, just to be clear. They're not very smart, but they primarily use their hearing when they're underwater. And when they get out of the water, they're looking around like, where's the watermelon, or who do I bite at this point? I love your question about our threshold. We've got to figure this out. We need your help, fellow conspiracy realists. Join us for the most dangerous animal leaderboard. We've got excellent discourse going on Twitter about this. Noel, you raise fantastic points there. I think that's our most immediate question. What is the threshold for quote unquote large animal? Tell us all about it. And also, if you have provable psychic powers or a proven means of preventing weaponized psychic powers, we want to hear from you. We try to be easy to find online.
Or hit us up via the psychic plane.
There it is. Get to us.
Any, I saw the TV Glow fans out there. You can find us, however, on the internet, if that's your bag, at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on, to Ben's point, X, FKA, Twitter. I actually saw a stat the other day, Ben, that like 90% of the media still refers to X as X, formerly known as Twitter, thereby making it one of the least successful rebrands in the history of rebrands. Just putting that out there because we're one of them. Yeah, that's also Conspiracy Stuff. On Facebook, we have our Here's Where It Gets Crazy Facebook group where you can get in on the conversation. And on YouTube, where we have video content coming at you on the regular. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
You can also give us a phone call on a telephonic device. The number is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, you will hear a hopefully familiar voice and then a beep like so. Beep. After that beep, that's sort of your gunshot at the beginning of the race. You have 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes are yours. Tell us what's on your mind. Tell us the name you would like to be referred to. Let us know if we can use your name and or message on the air. Most importantly, do not censor yourself. One of the best ways to contact us as a group is also email. Give us the links, give us the pictures, take us to the edge of the rabbit hole, and we will do the rest. Just drop us a line at our good old-fashioned email address, where we are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.